guys, so welcome back to the Black and Broad podcast. I'm your host, Tino Kuda Tondarai Bunzabaya. I ain't going to repeat that. Here's a podcast that's creating a dialogue and the space for black men to be their most authentic selves. Now, my guest today is Timothy Stewart. And if you would believe that Timothy, at the age of 40, was broke and homeless, and this was due to his numerous years of being addicted to various amounts of drugs. And you find out a bit about Timothy's journey and how he ended up recovering from his addiction, where now he's 19 years clean. And I would like to tell you that, well, should I tell you or should I don't want to spoil it for you, but he got addicted to drugs at a very early age, got introduced to drugs at a very early age. And you find out his childhood, you find out how that had impacted him and the people that he was hanging around with and the men that was introduced in his life and how they had a positive and a negative influence on him. And so you find out a lot of things about Timothy in this episode, and I think people are really going to enjoy the episode. It's really, there's lots of laughs, there's loads of good nuggets of information where there's good rapport. He asks me questions. I always love when people ask me questions because it feels more like a conversation, right? You know what I mean? Everyone likes to be asked questions. Come on. So, yeah, I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed that part of the episode. And let me give you guys a little snippet, actually, of what you got to look forward to in this episode. So bear with me with just a second.
Never heard.
Let me tell you something. At that point, I became a bad boy. I became defiant at that point. I didn't care, right? I was embarrassed. And that's when I started using weed to alter what I was feeling. I didn't want to feel that.
Yeah.
And so I went and smoked some weed and I didn't feel that. And that became my coping mechanism for anything. It developed to where if there's anything I didn't like or didn't want to feel or didn't want to deal with, I could always smoke some weed. Our society as a whole. Now, I don't want to knock any kind of rehabilitation center. That's not my purpose, and I'm not discrediting anything that anyone is doing that's trying to help somebody, right?
Mm-hmm.
I want to make sure I make that point very clear. But a lot of focus is on the substance or the activity, which is only a sign, a symptom. See, if I hit my hand or break a knuckle on my hand, I'm going to get pain. Well, the pain is a sign or a symptom that there is a problem. My hand is broke. The pain is not the problem. The pain is only a symptom. And we look at alcohol abuse and substance abuse as the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not the problem. It's only a sign that there is a problem. The problem is our way of thinking. What dictates the type of harvest that a field will produce? Is it the soil or the seed?
I'd say the soil, to be honest with you.
Okay. See, that tells me you didn't grow up on a farm. You're not a country boy like this. You're a city boy. It's the seed. Mm. It's the seed that's sown into the soil that produces the type of harvest. A apple seed planted in soil will produce an apple tree.
Yeah.
Period. Right? It's not the soil. Now the soil will dictate the amount of harvest, and that's another story. But the seed dictates the type of harvest. Well, check this out. Words and deeds are just like seed. They always produce after their own kind. That's a law of the universe. So here's how positive affirmations really work. Because my soul is just like soil, just like a seed will produce, I don't care who plants it, an apple seed will produce an apple tree if it's sown in sprouts. It's going to be an apple tree.
Mm.
Our soul is just like soil. Words are just like seed. So I can take words out of my mouth that go into my ear and sow the type of seed for the type of harvest I want to have.
So, now that you've seen what you got to look forward to in this episode, I really hope you guys enjoy this episode. If you do, please leave a like, subscribe, put a comment in the comment section. Tell me what you thought. I'd love to hear your views, and even if you're a recovering addict, or if you know someone that is, like, even if you want to put your story down into the chat so others can see and know that, you know, recovery is possible. I really hope you guys do that. Please engage. I love to see what you guys are thinking, what you guys are feeling. So yeah, let me let you watch this episode. So here is my conversation with Timothy Stewart. Hi, Timothy. Welcome to the Black and Raw podcast. It's really good to have you on.
Thank you so much. I'm very, very excited to be here, Tina. Thank you so kindly.
Oh no, it's bro. Thank you very much. Yeah, when I forgot who got into contact with me. I think it was someone that works for you. But when I saw what you're doing and your story and stuff like that, I thought, no, this would be very brilliant to get you on. So no, thank you for coming on and for joining me on your Sunday morning for you, isn't it?
It is Sunday morning, but I'm so grateful to be here and grateful for the opportunity to be on your show. I've looked at some episodes on your show and kind of did a little research, and I think what you are delivering is very much needed in our society today, and I think that a lot of people can really benefit from your work. You know, I call it a great work in the earth.
No, thank you very much. So yeah, I will just get in sort of with asking you, and the profile, when someone sent me your profile, I found it really interesting because it's talked about you being born to quite a wealthy family in a wealthy household, but then getting introduced into sort of recreational drugs quite early at an early age. So I wanted to ask, can you remember that far back what it was like being introduced to like marijuana at an early age?
Oh yes, like yesterday. I haven't forgotten anything. You know, when we say wealthy family, you know, for African American family, Black family, my grandfather, he only had a sixth grade education, but you know, he was able to work real hard, and we grew up on a 500-acre farm. So, you know, it wasn't like we were super wealthy, like, you know, the Kardashians or anything like that. But you know, for you know, in the country, for a Black family, I had access to resources that probably the majority of Blacks didn't have access in that area. Right?
Yeah,
We're talking
makes
about
sense.
in the dead country, right? We lived 4 miles from the town, and the town only had one stoplight. Still today,
Wow, one stoplight. That's crazy.
one stoplight. It was a caution light when I was growing up. Now it did get upgraded to a full-fledged stoplight. But yeah, so that's, you know, it wasn't anything extravagant, but you know, we had on that farm. Not only did we have the 500 acres of land, but we also had a general store that was connected to a little restaurant that was also connected to a club, a disco club that
Wow.
also had a hotel behind it in one long building. And so, you know, as an early, you know, early lad at 12 years old, you know, I was exposed to seeing people live lifestyles that, you know, may be different than what they lived from the weekend to during the week, right?
Yeah.
And so I had a family member who's one of my favorite cousins. I love him today. You know, we talk often. He grew up in Cincinnati, and he would come down to the farm and work on the farm during the summers. And we became very tight. He was 5 years older than me. So when I was 10, he was 15. So I first started smoking cigarettes, and then at 12, I got introduced to marijuana. Now he's 17, you know, and 17 is when, you know, the average person may start to dibble or dabble with something like that, maybe, but not at 12,
Yeah, no,
right?
definitely.
Yeah, I remember smoking my first cigarette. It was a cool cigarette, and we had a like a lake on our farm, and we had a pier. And I remember smoking that first cool cigarette, and I got so dizzy, right? I couldn't even walk off the pier. I was like, the pier was moving. It was crazy.
You were
But
tripping early.
yeah, I was tripping early. But when I first smoked marijuana, Actually, marijuana wasn't the first thing. The first thing I did was I drank some wine, some Mad Dog
Okay.
2020. You probably don't know what that is, but that's
No idea.
way back, right? But then it gave me this altered sense and you know, this feeling, this euphoric feeling. And then when the marijuana came, it even went higher than that. That same summer, you know, I drank some wine. I was like, yeah, I like this. And then I smoked some marijuana, and it was like, wow, this is, you know. And so what would happen is when they come home when they would come to the farm to work during the summer, they would come to work, save up money so they could buy school clothes. And then they would leave and go back to Cincinnati. So when he left, then I had to learn how to get marijuana on my own.
Mm.
And and I'll just tell you, when I first started smoking marijuana, I was addicted to it right from the start. I smoked every day. I smoked, and this was a typical day. Tino, I would get up, I'd smoke a joint. You know, they don't smoke joints now; they smoke blunts. But um, I smoke a joint. When I got dressed for school, when I got to school, I smoke a joint. When at lunchtime, I smoke a joint. When I got back home from school, I smoke a joint. Before I went to bed, I smoke a joint.
Wow. And no one noticed, like at school, or like you go in the
I knew
school
how
like
to,
hi and
yeah, I knew how to disguise it, right? I became a master because remember, we had this store, so there was a lot of activity going on. So it wasn't like a pinpoint, you know, focus on me.
because there's a lot
I
of other
always kept
stuff.
I always kept Visine with me, so my eyes wouldn't get red. I wouldn't even smoke
Ah.
unless I had Visine, right? And so, um, and I could function, and they didn't even know. You know, now there was a couple times when it kind of. I remember, I remember one time, my grandfather and some other men and my great grandmother were sitting in the store, and I came in and I had smoked one, and you know, I wouldn't just smoke and then go around them. I'd give it a little time, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I,
let the
you know,
smell go away.
yeah, yeah. Well, it didn't even smell like what they had today. It's
No.
totally different, right? And so, but yeah, the smell would die down a little bit. But um, somebody said something that was really funny, and I was laughing. Tino, man, it was so funny to me, you know, because the weed they smoke now puts people in a stupor, right? But back then, you smoke some weed, it make you laugh and make you eat, right? You get the
Yeah.
munchies, right? And so I was laughing so hard, and I looked up, and nobody else was laughing. And my great grandmother said, she looked at my granddad and said, "That's that stuff."
That's it. They already knew. They
she didn't
already
she
knew.
didn't know what to call it. She said, "That's that stuff." They knew I was doing something, but they couldn't catch me. You know, eventually I did get caught a couple times. My mom and dad caught me, and they didn't know how to deal with that. They didn't know what, it's 15-year-old kid smoking, with an ounce of weed under his bed. You know what? How,
Yeah.
what? Okay, what we're gonna do is work you half to death. So they would, you know, work me.
And did it work? Did it
No,
work? No.
no, absolutely not. It didn't. Um, because here's the thing about um, smoking the weed. And I say this in my book. I talk about my first real hurt was I was always a kind of, you know, I had a high level of intellect, and I could very creative. And I was selected one time um, to work on this project that they were going to send to Washington D.C. All the schools around the country were working on an art project, and I got selected to work on this project. 5 kids, and this was, I think I was in the third, fourth grade. Miss Jenkins, I won't forget it. And so we had this little section that we would get to go to work on, apart from the class, right?
Makes you
So
feel special, don't
yeah, special.
it?
And so I remember being selected. I was so excited, and I went home that day and I changed my clothes, got into my work clothes, and I went down and I told my dad, said, "Hey, Dad, I got selected to work on a project, but I have to stay after school." Miss Jenkins said, "In order to work on this project, because we had a timeline, you had to stay after school, and your parents had to pick you up." So I said, "Dad, I got selected for this project, but you had to come pick me up after school." And he looked up at me and he said, I can't come out there and pick you up from school. I got to work. And man, that was the first real hurt. I mean, emotional hurt. I mean, I was floored, man. I was hurt because I had been selected. Miss Jenkins called us out. We got
Yeah,
to
you're
take our stuff
excited.
out of our desk and go over to the new section. Boy, I was somebody. And now you're gonna take this from me because you can't come pick me up from school. So, the next day, I was still hurting and just kind of threw me for a loop. And there was a young lady that lived not too far from me, and she had gotten selected. Her name is Diane. Still friends with her today. And so she said, "Hey Tim, what's wrong?" And I told her what happened. She said, "Well, you can ride home with us." And I
Yeah.
got excited again. I
Again,
said,
yeah,
"Yeah,
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Now my dad doesn't have to. He doesn't have to come and pick me up, right?" So we got to school that day, and I told Miss Jenkins what happened. I said, "But Diane said I could ride home with her." She said, "Okay, but you got to get that approved by your dad, your parents. So I'll let you work on the project, continue working on the project, but I need you to let me know tomorrow if your parents are going to be okay with that." So I got home that afternoon, and I ran, changed clothes and ran down to my dad. Said, "Hey, Dad, you don't have to come pick me up. Diane said I could ride home with them. They'll bring me home." And my dad said, "Who's gonna come and work on these? Who's gonna clean out, wash out these turkey waters? You can't stay out there and work after school on no project. You got to come home and go to work."
Another
Boy,
hurt.
let me tell you something. At that point, I became a bad boy. I became defiant at that point. I didn't care, right? I was embarrassed. And that's when that's when I started using weed to alter what I was feeling. I didn't want to feel that.
Yeah.
And so I went and smoked some weed and I didn't feel that. And that became my coping mechanism for anything. It developed to where if there's anything I didn't like or didn't want to feel or didn't want to deal with, I could always smoke some weed.
Yeah. Wow. It's crazy that you remember it to such vivid detail. And the fact that I guess now you've sort of been able to reflect on that sort of where maybe it started with your parents. Do you think your parents could have maybe taken a different approach, like looking back on it, or do you think sort of that's just what they had to do in that time? I
Yeah,
don't know.
you know, Tino, like because the addiction progressed into cocaine and then eventually crack, I look back and I had resentments against my parents because it's like, how do you let your kid get involved in this and you do the same thing? But here's what I had to come to the understanding and the realization of is my parents gave me the best that they could. They
Mm,
didn't know how, they didn't have the resources, access to the information like we have today. Nobody knew really what addiction was back then. They didn't talk about that. People drink alcohol every day. They call them alcoholics, but they function. It was, but these were grown men. And that's what I kind of hung out with. When my cousin went back to Cincinnati, back to the city, during the rest of the months of the year, I was hanging out with 40, 45-year-old men. Those were my playmates at
wow.
12, 13, 14 years old. So I was hanging out with grown men who smoked cigarettes, who drank alcohol, who, stepped out on their wives, but they were responsible. They took care of home. I saw them do that, right? But they taught me how to work. Now, when it comes to working, I'm hard to beat.
Yeah.
And that's what my dad taught me. I just lost my dad. He just passed away in November, and it was real emotional for me
Sorry
because
for
we
your
didn't really,
loss as
yeah,
well.
we didn't have that tight father-son relationship. There's no bad blood between us, but
Mm,
he didn't have a dad, so he didn't really know how to be that to me. He was never taught how to be that for me, and so those resentments that I once had turned into respect, right? Because he gave me what he could.
mm. Yeah, I think I've had plenty of conversations before with people where we like you sort of have to come to a point where you sort of your parents are human and that they, you know, like as a kid, you sort of think, oh, my parents didn't have a life before me. Like I'm like to you, you're like, I'm all there is. Like, but like when you're older, you find out, oh no, they had a life before me. Like they've had their own traumas, they had their own things which they've had to deal with, and they are sort of just doing the best they can with what they've got. And yeah, I'm glad you were able to come to that point as well, especially now losing your father. You can sort of view him in a different light as well.
Yeah, yeah. I was just out with my mom last night. Took her out to eat, and man, it's quite funny to kind of see who, because she's grown too,
Mm,
and so after my brother and sisters and I left, she became a foster parent, and so she went back and she had to take classes, to become a foster parent, and she was sharing some things with me last night about what she learned about how the best practices and raising kids and how to teach them, and I'm saying, well, who is this?
where is this when I was young?
You
Yeah.
mean the switchology? You done dropped that? But it's amazing to see that even she's grown in her knowledge. And look, let's face it. My mom and my dad, they were very proud of me because I'm coming up on 19 years clean, and um, you know, I was not. They were not looking for me to make it, right?
Mm,
And so they kind of gained some um, pride about, hey, we didn't lose him, right? We gave him enough, right? And they did. They gave me enough discipline to hold on to so that I could start the process and maintain the process once I understood what the real problem was. Because see, at first I didn't know I thought the drugs and the alcohol were the problem, but
mm.
they weren't. It was my way of thinking. And so, my mom, she's kind of proud of who I've become today. She understands that I use my hard-won lessons to help other people kind of avoid some of the pitfalls that I fell into and that she fell into, and so it's pretty good relationship, solid relationship now.
Yeah, no, that's very good to hear. And you said that when you were a child that you saw older men sort of having addictions or sort of drinking and maybe cheating on wives and stuff like that, but also still taking care of their family and seeming like they're functioning. And so I guess for you, during the years when you were an addict, like did that seeing those men doing that, did that sort of help you sort of keep like your life on like one path, but then also other things were happening below? Like,
Well, it gave me the idea of what a man, from their perspective, what a man is. A man goes to work, even in my darkest days of addiction, I went to work, right?
mm,
I might stay up all night getting loaded, right? Get 15 minutes of sleep and go back to work the next day.
wow,
Insane. I mean,
how?
I would do
Just
that
how?
literally over, and I've done that so many times I can't even count. But they did give me that kind of structure and discipline. Look, no matter what, you got to go to work, right? And so my dad was that way. My dad was probably one of the workingest men I've ever known in my life. Um, but I, like I said, nobody really knew what addiction really was. I took it to alcohol. Yeah, it's pretty bad. But again, the drugs and the alcohol I discovered weren't the problem, and it took me a lot of years to figure that out, right? And it wasn't until I figured that out that I was able to get on the path that I'm on now. That my
Yeah.
way of thinking was the problem. So those men, they taught me how to work. They taught me how to hunt, how to fish, how to ride horses. There was some positive stuff in there. It wasn't all bad.
Yeah, I guess that like there never is sort of, I don't know, like there's always sort of some positives to your experiences and stuff like that, because as you saying, your dad was working quite a lot, so, and you maybe didn't have that very close-knit relationship, but then you also had men in your life. Sure, they were showing you a different version of what it means to be a man, maybe not a
Yes,
healthy version, but they were still showing you tools and skills and stuff that you're actually doing now that are benefiting your life.
absolutely, absolutely. And when I look back on it now, man, it gave me goosebumps by hearing you say that. Um, you know, I'm a survivor, right? I can survive. You drop me off in the woods right now, I'll survive.
You're good.
I'm good, right? And it's because of what they taught me. Now, I learned some things that probably weren't so good for me, but today I've learned how, as you said, to focus on the positive things that I did get, and focus on that. They when they asked Tiger Woods about the shots that he wasn't so good at, he said, I don't focus on them. I focus on the shots that I'm really good at. And I
Yeah.
train really hard on those shots because that will overcompensate for the shots that I'm not that good at.
Yeah, no, that's quite good. I've never heard that from Tiger Woods. But yeah, I think that's a very good thing to focus on. And I mean, even Tiger Woods had his demons as well, didn't he? So there's
Yeah.
obviously no one's perfect, but even I guess for people that have got all access to resources and you think, oh, they could get the best help in the world, they're all right, but they've still got
And
their
one,
demons.
yeah, and I'm going to wait till you ask the question, but because I'm going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that when, you know, about the 12 principles. When we talk about that, I'm going to talk about what I've learned about that process.
Yeah, no, bro. And so you told me before that you went to rehab quite a many a times, and I guess I want to know from you, like, what do people like when people think about addicts and going to rehab? Like, what are common misconceptions? What do people sort of always get wrong when they're talking about people that are addicts and actually attending rehab?
Okay, great question. So our society as a whole. Now, I don't want to knock any kind of rehabilitation center. That's not my purpose, and I'm not discrediting anything that anyone is doing that's trying to help somebody. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I want to make sure I make that point very clear. But a lot of focus is on the substance or the activity, which is only a sign, a symptom. See, if if I hit my hand or break a knuckle on my hand, I'm going to get pain. Well, the pain is a sign, or a symptom that there is a problem. My hand is broke. It's not, the pain is not the problem. The pain is only a symptom. And we look at alcohol abuse and substance abuse as the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not the problem. It's only a sign that there is a problem. The problem is our way of thinking. See, here's kind of, and I'm going to go ahead and get into it now. Here's what I've learned, Tino, is that everything, including you and I, everything was created for a purpose, packed with potential to function by principles. Everything on planet Earth, everything that's ever created was created for a purpose, packed with potential to function by principles. So what happens is, and what I have found is that uh, a lot of people never discover their purpose.
Mm-hmm.
But even somebody like Tiger Woods, who's discovered his purpose, that potential, I call it a gift, right? Everybody has a gift. He he discovered the gift. His dad helped him discover the gift. He trained the gift. He practiced, but he didn't function by the principles to protect that gift or
Yeah.
safeguard that purpose, and it caused him some problems. So, to answer your question, to give a better analogy with the treatment centers, um, are you familiar with like yard landscaping, anything like that?
Yeah, we have people that do landscaping, like working in
So
gardens and stuff like
yeah.
that.
So
Yeah, yeah.
if a weed comes up in your yard, right,
Mm.
and you break it off at the top of the dirt, what's going to happen 3 days later when you come back?
Just gonna come back up.
It's going to come back up.
Yeah.
That's what I did when I was going to the treatment centers, because I thought the drugs and the alcohol were the problem, the people. I could stay away from the people, places, and things, but it kept coming back up because I never got to the root. The root was my way of thinking. When I received the revelation in that 12th rehab center that my thinking was the problem, I pulled it up from the root, and it
Mm.
hasn't come back. That weed hasn't been back. So a lot of treatment facilities and programs, they put a lot of emphasis on the activity, the gambling, or the sex, or the use of the substance. My program is a little different. Let's discover who you are, Because here's why that's so important, Tino. When you discover your purpose, it gives us a sense of significance. It's our source of value. Like, would you handle a, a Cracker Jack, a ring that comes out of a Cracker Jack box differently than a ring that comes out of a jewelry store, a 10-carat diamond ring? You would handle them differently,
Yeah,
right?
cool. Yeah, definitely.
So when we discover, like when I discovered that I had a purpose, and it wasn't to use drugs and alcohol that was stopping me from fulfilling my purpose. See, I'm going there. You ready?
You
You
go
ready? I'm
on.
gonna go there.
Go
Purpose,
on.
when we discover that that is our reason for being born. Everybody comes here with a purpose. Everything and everybody was created for a purpose. When we discover that purpose, it will create a vision. A vision is when we see our purpose in pictures.
Mm.
And when we see that vision, I see myself on stage speaking to millions of people. I've seen it a lot of times already, right? That vision will create and ignite a passion. That passion is described by people as influence. And when we influence other people, that's called leadership.
Yeah.
So everybody is a leader in their area of functioning. You are a leader in the podcast industry. I
Thank you.
love it. I love what you're doing. I love your work. I couldn't do it. It's not my gift. I tell people, look, you can wake me up at 3 o'clock in the morning, stand me in front of 3,000 people, give me a microphone, and I'll get down like
You're all
James
good.
Brown, right?
Yeah.
But if you put a computer in front of me and ask me to fix it, forget about it. It's not going to work. We're going to Best Buy and buy another one, right?
Give it to someone
Because
else.
yeah,
Yeah.
get somebody else to do it. Right? Um, and that's what I help people do. So I help people discover their purpose. Now, the process is to discover the purpose, discover the gift. I'm sorry, discover the
Mm.
gift, because the gift was given to us to fulfill the purpose. So we discover the gift, we train the gift, and then we serve the gift to the world. Like the world pays us to be, really, the world will pay us to be who we are, who
Yeah.
we were created to be. Michael, let me tell you, I've done some research on Michael Jackson. I studied leaders, people who have accomplished great, enormous feats in my lifetime. They asked Michael Jackson, they said, Michael, do you love music? How do you think he answered that, Tino?
You know what? Because you're asking me that question, I feel like he's gonna say no. Like I don't think it's gonna be like, yeah, I love music. I think he's gonna say no.
You, you know what he said?
What?
I am music.
Oh, okay. Okay.
See, when you become I am, Michael Jordan is basketball, Tiger Woods is golf, Serena Williams is tennis. When a person discovers I am, you can't stop them. And they won't do things to destroy themselves because they're protected like that diamond ring. You're
Yeah.
going to put that diamond ring in a special place. You're not going to be hanging it, letting it, you're not going to sit it on the dresser or on the counter or anywhere. You're going to watch it, right? So when a
Yeah.
person discovers their value, their purpose, then they won't do things to destroy it.
Yeah. You know what, you talking about that actually. I don't know if you're an NBA guy, but there's a NBA star called Ja Morant who recently he's been having he was on his IG live with a gun in his hand, and there's stuff coming out about him. And I remember I was listening to like Stephen A and some of those other people, and they were like, at the end of the day, Ja, like, you're an amazing talent. Like, you're already a leader. Like, now you've made it to the league and you're who you are. Like, people look up to you, kids look up to you. So like, your actions need to sort of lead to what you want to do, to who you want to be. And that he needs to figure that out for himself. And he's young, he's still young. It's okay for him to make mistakes.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate I hadn't heard that story about him. I've heard about him a lot. Look, I'm a Michael Jordan fan, right? So that's how that's how I became Talk Man Talk. So when Michael came in the league, he was Jump Man Jump. I said, well,
Yeah.
I'm gonna be Talk Man Talk.
I like that. I like that. That's
Right?
good.
But see, that's why promoting these principles, these 12 principles of inner peace, is so vital to change the culture in our society, because these 12 principles honesty, hope, faith, courage, integrity, willingness, humility, discipline, forgiveness, acceptance, awareness, and gratitude. Those when those 12 principles become habits, they're valid in any room. They will protect any gift,
Mm.
any gift, any purpose. Those 12 principles will protect because those principles are valid in the boardroom, the locker room, the living room, the classroom, even the bedroom. You tell me any person who will be honest and practice honesty, hope, faith, courage, integrity, willingness, humility, discipline, forgiveness, acceptance, awareness, and gratitude. Any human. I don't care whether rich, poor, black, white, male, female, don't know what they are. Any human
Yeah.
who practices those principles in every affair, they'll be successful. Guaranteed. I can guarantee it. You
Yeah.
know why? You know why I can guarantee it?
I guess because it helped you.
Well, that's the evidence. It's evidence based, but I
Yeah.
can guarantee it because it's a law. Those a principle is a law, right? Um, Principles are fundamental laws that guide our decision making process, empowering us to live a lifestyle of integrity and morality. We don't look at laws really informing our integrity and morality and behavior. Because here's the deal, Tino. The most powerful government on this planet is self-government. It's not democracy. It's not dictatorship. It's not monarchy or republican or it's self-government. And I don't want to get into a religious thing, but it's not religious, it's spiritual. We were sent here to govern ourselves, right?
Yeah.
Nobody can govern me better than me. So I have to practice these principles. And I talked about law. See, a law, here's another thing that I learned. Law is the foundation for creation. Everything functions by law. Everything was created by law. And everything exists on law. Without law, what you have, what do you have without law?
Listen.
I like asking questions. Do,
No, that's
do you
fine.
know
I like it. I like it.
do you
Without law, I guess chaos or just
that's right.
disorder. You know what I mean?
Disorder.
Like nothing
That's right.
functions.
Exactly. So the difference between a garden and a forest is the garden is in order. There's laws that have been applied to that soil and that dirt, and it makes it look different
Yeah.
than rubbish in the woods. So
I
same
guess
thing with our
though,
life.
you could argue because we're talking about law and the principles of law, applying it sort of the law, like laws of nature and things like that, and the laws of the universe. I
That's
think
right.
even you could say a forest has laws because the whole
Absolutely.
ecosystem works for its benefit as well, isn't it? So it just sort of confounds the point that everything is governed by laws.
Yeah. There's 500 million. We've discovered 500 million galaxies. We haven't found the end of the world yet, the Earth,
Mm,
right?
still
And
expanding.
and and listen, everything works so orderly. It can only do that by law. We can send a rocket to the moon because we can calculate because everything works on a timing and it's by law. Gravity, right? It doesn't matter if you take 10 people and stand them on the top of the building where you're at. It doesn't matter what their belief system is, what the color of their skin is, how much money they have in the bank, what kind of substances they use or don't use, how many wives they. If they all 10 of them jump off, guess what's gonna happen?
They're all gone drop.
That's right, all of them,
Yeah.
because laws are universal. They work everywhere. They are impartial. Doesn't matter who they are. They are inherent in creation. You can't change it,
Mm.
and they are permanent. Honesty, hope, faith, courage, integrity, willingness, humility. Those are never going to change. They were here when we got here. They will be here when we leave.
Yeah, long after we go. Long
Yeah,
after we go.
I don't care how successful. And here's the thing: we've seen it, Tino. great talents, great gifts have come to this planet. But because they didn't have the principles to protect that gift and safeguard the purpose, it destroyed them. Marvin Gaye, um, Michael Jackson, Whitney Houston, uh, um, Elvis Presley, you name it.
Yeah.
Great gifts, but they didn't have the principles to protect it.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think I've never really thought about it in that way, and I
Most
really
people
like,
don't.
and I like
And I
how,
didn't either. And I
yeah.
had to because of the lifestyle. If I didn't, I would have died, man.
And I guess for you it was sort of a matter of life and death, isn't it? Like you
Yeah,
couldn't have kept going on how you were going on.
I couldn't, man. I was at the bitter end. I was at the end. And I, you know, and that's kind of how I got on this path was I got mad in that 12th rehab center. You know, I had bought a one-way ticket from New York. I was going to go to California and I got scared and I got off the bus in St. Louis and I had 2 pair of pants, 2 shirts, and $8 in my pocket at 40 years old. That's
Wow.
all I had on planet Earth. Now I've been in the Air Force. I've been around the world. I've worked in corporate America. I've been married. I've had houses, jewelry, cars, and I'm here and I'm bankrupt emotionally, spiritually, financially, physically, mentally. I'm just bankrupt, period.
Hit your rock bottom, didn't you, at that point, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like,
And that's, you know, and I was sitting in that 12th rehab center and tears started coming down my eyes because now I'm 1,200 miles away from all of my family and friends. But I knew I had to get away from everybody. Had to get away because I had access to resources because of my family. I could always say, hey, people would give me, you know, dope because they
yeah,
knew my family, right? They're like, he's gonna get the money.
yeah,
He can
he's
get
gonna
the
be
money,
right.
right? And so I was sitting in this 12th rehab center, man, and tears were coming down my face, and I was crying. 40-year-old man, broken, and I hit my hand on the table, and I got mad, and I said, God, why? Why does this keep happening to me? And that's when I got the revelation: drugs and alcohol not your problem. And it was like, I don't mean to sound spooky because I don't practice or promote spooky pooky foolishness, but it was something it was almost audible, right? It felt audible, but it came on the inside. Drugs and alcohol not your problem. And I looked around because there was nobody else in the chow hall, and I said,
Huh?
"Well,
Going
what is
crazy?
my problem?"
Yeah.
And the response was your way of thinking. And I said, "Well, how should I think?" And the response was, "Think in line with my word." Now, at that time, I grew up in the church and I attributed this to God, and I still do attribute it to God, but not religion. Not
Yeah.
religion, but God, right?
I think there is a
God and
difference.
religion is
Yeah.
two different components for me, right? I
Yeah.
don't, I don't judge people what they choose to believe, but for me, it's two. Those are different, and so the Bible really is what I call a manual. What I learned how to live a different lifestyle that I live today. The principles that I promote are from that Bible, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure they're written in other books too, maybe the Quran. I've never read the Quran, but I refer to them because I learned them from the Bible.
Yeah.
And,
I was gonna say I also I grew up a Christian as well, and I'm not it's not that I don't believe in God. I do believe in God, but I
mhm,
sort of don't follow the religion anymore, sort of for personal reasons. But
right.
I do think that sort of faith and religion helps people sort of cope with the difficulties of life. So I've always said I don't think I'm one to say God is the all true Jesus Christ, God, Christianity, God is the all
Mm,
Christ, because I think other religions have their manuals, they have their teachings, and that it helps them cope with life. But then at the same time, it also guides them as well. So I can't be like, sorry, you're wrong,
yeah,
even
I
though
can't do. Yeah,
yeah, even though your faith is guiding you in a way that is nice, that's good and principled.
yeah. And what it really comes down is to culture, right?
Mm,
Culture means, do you know the definition of the word culture is to
No.
grow. It's to grow, cultivate, right? So we all grow up in these cultures, and in the Black community, I can talk about the Black community. Is one of the things that we practice some traditions and rituals that are no longer valid. I don't know if they were ever valid, but
Mm.
and one of the things that I want to promote is to unity. See, a lot of the programs that have been created, in the religious world and even in the political world and, different organizations, it causes division.
Mm.
And that division hurts everybody. But see, these 12 principles can be the foundation because it doesn't matter whether you're a Baptist, a Methodist, a Pentecostal, a Democrat, a Republican, a Buddhist, a Muslim, a atheist, doesn't matter. These 12
Yeah.
principles, they're still valid.
True. And so we've mentioned and we've talked about you've talked about some of your 12 principles. And I guess how did you come up with them? Like what was sort of your thinking when you were like, yeah, how did you come up with them? What
Okay,
was it in that
that's a
time?
great question. So there's you heard of AA, Alcoholics Anonymous.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so these two guys, Dr. Bob and Bill W, were the two people who created the first 12-step program,
Mm.
Alcoholics Anonymous. They were both alcoholics, right? And before them, when a person was a severe alcoholic, do you know what they would do to them?
No, what?
They would put them in an insane asylum, in a psychological ward, because they didn't know
No.
how to handle that,
Yeah. And that's not a
right?
good solution.
Yeah. And so these two guys were very intelligent. Um, Dr. Bob was a doctor, and uh, uh, um, Bob was an investor on Wall Street.
Mm.
Bill was an investor on Wall Street. So they met up at this conference, and they met up at the bar, and they both knew they shouldn't be drinking, right? And they said, hey man, we shouldn't even be here, right? And they just started talking,
Yeah.
and they realized at 3 o'clock in the morning, neither one of them had taken a drink.
Wow.
So they were both part of what they called this Oxford group. It was a Christian sect back then.
Mm.
And they had their own Bible. It was a derivative of the King James Version. It was the Oxford Bible. And what they did was they went into that Bible and they found these 12 principles. They called them steps. So when they created the 12 steps, they were created from principles. Well, I went back to the original principles
Yeah.
that created the steps. And then I found them. They're written in the Bible, in their scriptures to point out these particular principles. So I didn't create them. I just have arranged them based on some research that's been done. And let's face it, Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, all of the AA 12-step programs, they've saved millions of people's lives.
Mm.
So this evidence-based, it works. But we've never looked at it, these principles, to inform behavior, because we can't behave beyond our belief.
Yeah.
Belief dictates behavior, right? So when I was growing up, sorry about that.
No,
So
sorry.
when I was being raised, a lot of those principles were instilled in me. They weren't called out specifically,
Mm.
but our society has moved away from some of that. Now, there was some principles, there was some beliefs that I adopted. Like, one of the things, because there were people in my family and people around me that didn't live a lifestyle of integrity and morality. They said, "Look, it's okay to do a little wrong, just don't get caught."
Yeah.
But well, that's bad belief.
Mm.
That's a bad belief. I was well into my adult years before I realized, wait a minute, that ain't right.
That ain't good. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Just don't get caught.
That's not
Okay.
right. Right? Yeah, that's wrong. And so, in our society today, Tino, in our school system, we have kids killing kids, right?
Mm.
We have an opioid epidemic, and these 12 principles have the power to change the culture in those communities. So that's my passion and my purpose and my mission today is to get these 12 principles in communities, in schools, in universities, on billboards, on highways, because they are so consistent. Because, when you talk about marriage and family and community, those institutions are good. It's the individuals that get into those institutions that bring the problems.
Yeah.
So if you get two people who both practice these principles, that they both practice these 12 principles. Now these two people create a marriage, and that marriage functions by these 12 principles. And that marriage now creates a family, and that family functions by these 12 principles. And you have other families that come together to make a community, and they all function by these 12 principles. That will be a safe community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But it
definitely.
starts with the individuals.
No, it does. And I do really like that, because I've always said to myself, and it was like when I've ever had conversations, I was like, even if I'm not a Christian, I would always want to instill sort of Christian values into my children and into my family, because I don't think there's anything wrong with, hope and integrity and some of the stuff, the 12 principles that you're talking about, because I think I will make a better society. And yeah, I think it's hard, isn't it? It's hard to maybe try and always hit them at the same time. But I think if you've got good intentions and you're wanting to be better, then by starting off with these, it's quite easy to make the progress, to start at least.
Absolutely. And we say we practice these principles. Nobody gets them perfect,
Mm,
nobody. We practice these principles in all of our affairs. And, we are creatures of habit. Humans are creatures of habits. See,
yeah,
we don't really dictate our future. We decide our habits, and our habits dictate our future. So
yeah,
if we can get these kids now ingrained into developing these habits with practicing these principles, then see, when it comes to addiction, there's an imaginary line, right? That goes from recreational use to full-blown addiction. What's so diabolical about it is you don't know that you've crossed that imaginary line until after you've crossed it.
yeah.
But once you cross it, you can't go back. A pickle, it's like a pickle can never go back and be a cucumber. Never.
Yeah, you're right.
Right. So if we can help these young people, and even these 12 principles will work for somebody who hasn't crossed that line, for anybody. It doesn't have to even deal with addiction. Families, families begin to instill these principles in their children at an early age, and they become habits. Then they will create a different type of lifestyle. But if we can help those who have maybe started off on the wrong path, they're using recreational, and help them avoid crossing over that imaginary line, helping them identify, man, I'm gonna tell you something. And you try it out. Ask people, who are you? You'll see people stop and have to think about,
Even I'm thinking about it. You're trying to listen to you, but also I'm thinking about it too. You know what I
yeah,
mean? It's
who
hard.
who am I?
Yeah.
That's a powerful question. 3 powerful questions. Who am I? Where did I come from? What can I do? Those are 3 powerful questions every human being should be able to answer like that.
Mm.
But if you don't think about it,
You ain't gonna know
you
the
know,
answer. Yeah.
you're not gonna know the answer. And so that means you can be led off in any direction. Because
Mm.
if you go to the library and you're looking for a history book, you don't go to the sports section. You go to the history section,
Yeah,
right?
true.
Because you know. So when we know who we are, we know things that won't help us fulfill that purpose. We won't do things that will, you know, take us off an exit ramp from fulfilling our purpose,
Yeah,
right?
definitely. And you mentioned in terms of beliefs, and I think we've been talking about sort of beliefs that limit people, and a narrative that you tell yourself can really be quite powerful. Everyone talks about positive affirmations and things like that, and I think there's some people get into, oh, it's sort of just being hokey and cokey and like saying positive things to yourself, but I think positive affirmations help you change a narrative that you have about yourself. You know what I mean? And
Absolutely.
I
Now,
wanted, I was gonna,
go ahead.
you go on.
No, I want you to finish your question. What,
Well, I was just going to ask, in terms of how have limiting beliefs played a role in your life, and like how can people change narratives of themselves?
So I had to understand and study human functionality, Tino. I had to learn, okay, at 40 years old, I'm homeless, hopeless, and penniless.
Mm.
I had to understand, how do I function? I know how cars work. It has an engine, a transmission, electrical system. You put gas in it, start it up, put it in drive, go. How do I function as a human being? Right? I had to go back and I had to study, this thing, Tim Stewart. How do I function? So what I discovered is, as humans, we think, feel, and act.
Mm.
I want to get into this because I think it'll help some people, Tino. God, our creator, whatever a person chooses to call him, use the same system to operate in multiple scenarios. So, as a human being, I am a spirit. I'm a spirit. I live in a body and I have a soul. My soul is my mind, will, and emotion, right? And this is getting to the positive affirmations and how that actually works. My soul is just like soil in a field. In a field, Tino, I keep wanting to call you Timothy, but
It's close.
yeah. So I'll ask you a question. What dictates the type of harvest that a field will produce? Is it the soil or the seed?
I'd say the soil, to be honest with you.
Okay. See, that tells me you didn't grow up on a farm. You're not a country boy like me. You're a city boy. It's the seed. It's the seed that's sown into the soil that produces the type of harvest. A apple seed planted in soil will produce an apple tree.
Yeah.
Period. Right? It's not the soil. Now, the soil will dictate the amount of harvest, and that's another story. But the seed dictates the type of harvest. Well, check this out. Words and deeds are just like seed. They always produce after their own kind. That's a law of the universe. So here's how positive affirmations really work. Because my soul is just like soil, just like a seed will produce, I don't care who plants it, an apple seed will produce an apple tree if it's sown in sprouts. It's going to be an apple tree.
Mm.
Our soul is just like soil. Words are just like seed. So I can take words out of my mouth that go into my ear and sow the type of seed for the type of harvest I want to have. There's a story in the Bible, Joshua 1:8. I call it the formula for success, right?
Mm.
So Moses, if you're familiar with the Bible, Moses had led the Israelites out of Egypt and, got over in the wilderness, and Moses did some things that God told him not to do.
Yeah.
And God told Joshua, he said, Joshua, I want you to take my people in the promised land. And Joshua was like, wait a minute. Hey, how am
That's
I supposed to
Moses'
do
job.
this? Right. Right, exactly. Moses said, how am I supposed to do this? I want that ain't that. So God told Joshua, he said, Joshua, this is Joshua 1:8. If you will meditate in this book of the law, day and night, and observe to do according to all that is written therein, then you will make your way prosperous and you will have good success. Joshua, if you will meditate in this book of the law, day and night, and observe to do according to all that's written, then you will make your way prosperous and you will have good success. So the key word in there is meditate. That's the first part. Because if we don't get to meditate, we can't get the rest of it, right?
Mm.
So how do you think God was telling Joshua to meditate, Tino?
To study it, to live it, and to be in it, I guess.
I love that answer. And man, I love your transparency. No, really, because there's somebody that's listening to this it's gonna help.
Mm.
There are so many different types of meditations. Here's a principle. Words don't have meaning, people do. Here's what I mean by that. If I say to you, Tino, I'm getting ready to go to the crib, where am I going?
To your home.
Right. Now, to a brother, it's where he lives. To a
Yeah.
mother, it's where she lays the baby. To a farmer, it's where he stores corn. Same word, CRIB. To a brother, it's where he lives. To a mother, it's where she lays the baby. To a farmer, it's where he stores corn. Words don't have meaning, people do. And that's one of the big things that I have found a lot of people read into the Bible instead of reading out of it. That word meditate that's used there comes from the Hebrew word hagah, and it means to mutter, to say the same thing over and over, out loud, over again.
Um,
I can do, that's where positive affirmations come in. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Whatsoever my hands touch shall prosper. I am the head and not the tail. I am honest. I do have hope. I have faith. I have courage. I operate with integrity. I am and we say that over and over. He was telling Joshua, meditate. Now, that's taking the words out of my mouth and sowing them into my soil
yeah.
to produce a harvest of success. Now, you said that you do landscaping. Let me tell you why.
Well, I don't
It's
do it. I just know of it.
yeah, right, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So you know how I'll ask you this. Any idea of the best way to keep the weeds out of your lawn? You know, you want a pretty, beautiful grass, like a golf course. You see how a golf course,
Yeah.
the grass is so pretty and green?
Never thought of
No
how they always
weeds.
keep it so good.
So if I ask you, what would you think is the best way to keep the weeds out of your lawn?
Got to deal with it at the root. Got to pull it out, and I guess sterilize. My grandma always puts bleach on her roots and takes them out.
Okay.
Don't know how that works, but
Okay. Well, most people say you spray them, right? Or you pull them up. Those are ways you can, but they're not the best way. Here's the best way, Tino. The best way to keep the weeds out of our lawn is to sow the grass seeds so thick that the weed seeds can't take root.
so they can never. Yeah. Oh, okay.
So the grass seeds will choke out the weed seeds and they'll never grow up.
Prevention.
Every
That is.
year, every year here in America, we do something called aerate and overseeding. Okay, so aerate means we pluck holes in the yard, and then overseeding, you throw grass seed out. You just throw grass seed out. Now, one of the it's done the last week of September and the last 2 weeks of September and the first 2 weeks of October,
Mhm.
and then you do it again just before the spring, the last week of March and the last 2 weeks of March and the first 2 weeks of April, right? Why would you think you would overseed and throw grass seed out, and it's getting ready to be wintertime and the grass is dead?
Well, I guess that's when the weed has time to harvest, isn't it? It gets ready before
That's you said it.
you started.
You said it. It gives the grass the opportunity to develop a solid root system.
Mm.
So while the winter, it doesn't have to support the grass on the top. It's developing that root system underneath. So when the weather changes and the grass comes out, it can support a healthy looking lawn. But guess what? It's no different for us. When we're going through our trials and tribulations, that's the time we should be sowing the seed. That's what God was telling Joshua. Sow my words so thick that the weed seeds, fear, doubt, worry, and confusion can't take root.
Yeah. I mean, we always say, I think in anything, prevention is always better than reacting, isn't it?
That's that.
Like,
And
it's
look,
just, it's easier, it's more efficient, and you
absolutely,
save yourself a world of trouble, don't you? And if
yeah.
you can, like people here, we say nip it in the bud. If you can nip it in the bud before it even comes up,
That's
then
right.
you're
Nip it in
sorted.
the bud. That's right. Matter of fact, Tino, that's my I travel to schools and that's my speaking series. An
Yeah,
ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
definitely, definitely.
yeah.
So how have you found supporting, because as you're saying what you do with TalkManTalk, you're trying to get people to find their purpose rather than dealing with the symptom, you're trying to deal with the cause. And so
Right.
how have you found supporting others in breaking their addiction and finding purpose?
Well, one thing I'll let you know is very rewarding. I'll tell you, Tino, um, one of the things it does for me, I went through a lot of pain and loss in my life. Um, uh, and to have the opportunity to share my experience and knowledge with someone to help them avoid some of the pitfalls that I landed in,
Mm,
it makes all that I went through worth it. I just went and spoke at a correctional facility here, 2 weeks ago for Black History Month, and you know, I could identify with those men, right? Because I've been there. I know what it's like, and no amount of college education could help a person identify with what they're living, how they're living. I've been there. I know what it's like, right? And man, after I spoke, they came up and they hugged me and they shook my hand, and no amount of money on this planet could give me the gratification that that did.
mm,
So, you know, um, that's the first piece. It gives me a lot of gratification. But the second piece is I understand my purpose now. For so long, Tino, for so many years, I said, God, why? Why does this have to happen to me? Why did I have to get addicted to drugs? Why did I have to lose my family? Why did I have to, be the black sheep? Why did I have to go bankrupt? Why did I have to lose everything? Why? Now I understand because I can look a person in the eye who's dealing with that dilemma and I can tell them, I know what that feels like.
mm.
Identification is very powerful. you know um and so it's just a part of my purpose, and now it's become my passion.
Yeah. No, brilliant, brilliant. And Timothy, I've loved this whole conversation that we've had. And
Yeah, man.
I'm just going to ask you the final question that I ask all my guests. But say if there's a young black boy that's listening to this conversation, how
Uh-huh.
can something that you know or something that we've talked about help them with an understanding of themselves?
Okay. The first priority would be um to look at what they're good at naturally. Okay, some people are good at drawing, some people are good at singing, some people are good at speaking. When I discovered at 45 years old, I didn't discover my gift till I was 45 years old,
Mm,
but I had it. I had it when I landed here, like a bird lands here with flight already in it. Nobody puts flight in a bird. A fish lands here with swim already in it, right? Nobody puts swim in a fish. I remember getting in trouble all the time in first grade, second grade, third grade. Guess what I stayed in trouble for?
what?
Talking in the class. Had the gift when I got here, right?
Yeah.
So I would tell a young brother, let's look at let's look at what you're good at. What is your gift? That gift is going to give us an indication of what your purpose is. Now, when you understand your gift, now you can see your purpose. Now let's train your gift so you can serve your gift to the world. So you know that smoking cigarettes won't help you train your gift, or drinking alcohol, or all of these other kind of things. Look, you have a reason. Man, when a person says I am,
Mm,
that's strong, man. That is strong. So I would tell this young person, let's discover who you are, right? And let's train you. There's a you were created for a purpose. You have potential. And here are the 12 principles that will help you not only discover your purpose, but protect it and your gift.
yeah. No,
That's
brilliant.
it. Just very simple. The more I learn, Tino, the simpler life gets. There's a lot of theories and philosophies, and some of that stuff is, I'm gonna just say, some of the stuff out there is garbage.
Mm,
When we get down to the real deal,
the
it's
nitty
just as
gritty.
simple as, yeah, the nitty gritty.
Yeah.
It's just as simple as sowing grass seeds
Yeah.
and sowing the grass seed thick.
No, brilliant, brilliant. No, thank you very much, Timothy, for coming on. Is there anything you'd like to plug before you leave? I always
Yeah.
forget to ask people to do this, but yeah.
Um, you know, I like to give you a plug, Tino. I like to,
Oh, thank
thank
you.
you again so much for allowing me to be on your show and having this opportunity to, share my story, man. It's priceless for me. I really appreciate you so much. And I would say to anybody, hey, go over to my website, talkmantalk.com. All of my social media links are there. Even if you want to reach out to me, there's a contact me page there. I welcome the opportunity to work with anyone who is, serious about making some progress in their life. I want to work with people who are pretty committed and dedicated to making progress. But reach out to me. I even have a free 15-minute discovery call where we can just see if we are the right fit to work together. So yeah, don't be led by your problems. Don't be dragged by your problems. Be led by your dreams, right?
Yeah,
Governed by the priorities of discovering your purpose,
bro.
freeing yourself from yourself, and discovering your purpose.
No, bro. So yeah, thank you, Timothy. Thank you for
Yes,
coming
sir.
on. I'm gonna put all the links into the show notes, so everyone is gonna be able to find your website and find your book. And we didn't even get to talk much about your book, but that just means we're gonna get a part two. So
I'd welcome that anytime, my friend. Anytime.
Brilliant. So yeah, thank you very much, Timothy. And I
All
hope
right,
you have
buddy.
a good day.
You do the same. Thank you.
All right.
So that is the end of the episode. I hope you guys really enjoyed this episode. I really enjoyed talking to Timothy, and I think his story is really good for people to understand that, listen, even at 40, he was broke, he was homeless, he traveled across the country to go to a rehab center, and even at 40, he was able to make change in his life. So I think that's a good message for anybody that, listen, no matter how old you are, you can change, you can make change in your life. The dude that made KFC, he was like 60 when he made KFC. Don't verify me on that, but I know the nigga was old. So so yeah, you can make change in your life no matter how old you are, and I think that's a really good universal message for people to hear. And everything Timothy talks about in the podcast, I think, is really good for people to be able to digest and to be able to take with you into your life. And so, if you want to know more about Timothy, TalkManTalk is going to be in the show notes, so you can go and find them there. And then what else? I'm just going to put all his links into the show notes, right? So there. And anyway, if you want to get into contact with me, come on guys, y'all should already know, at Black and Raw, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. If you want to see me on LinkedIn, it's just my name. I'll pop it into the little box so you can find out. Boop, 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 boop. Sorry, I'm being silly. But yeah, thank you very much guys for listening, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please like and subscribe, and we will talk soon.